Hi, this is College of Circles. I'm Jeff, and today I'm talking about the top 10 figures I need Wizkids to make. There are 2,753 monsters and NPCs listed on D&D Beyond, so even with well over 1,000 Wizkids figures in the Icons of the Realms line, there are literally hundreds of monsters that have yet to be immortalized in pre-painted plastic. I'd like to ask you to please hit those like and subscribe buttons. I am planning some future giveaways as this channel reaches some subscriber milestones. More info on that to come. We start with a few honorable mentions and the characters that inspired this video. The Wild Beyond the Witchlight was one of my most anticipated books, and I was equally eager for the figures to come out. I knew that as soon as the figures were available, I'd be starting a Witchlight campaign. Unfortunately, that campaign didn't last long, and although I loved the figures, I was disappointed with the ones that were left out. From Nicholas Midnight, the elderly goblin at the ticket booth, to Diana Cloppington, the young lady turned centaur, to, of course, the Hourglass Coven. There were so many great characters with beautiful artwork that I wish I had figures for. Trying to make many of them in Hero Forge and had my first, and for obvious reasons, only attempt at painting figures myself. None of these creatures have their own stat blocks, and I didn't want to choose from among them, so they're grouped together here in the intro. For the top 10, I am only choosing monsters with a D&D Beyond stat block, with one exception. I'm excluding NPCs, saving them for a future video. And for each book, I'm only going to choose one monster from it. Otherwise, this would turn into top 10 figures we need from the Monstrous Compendium of Eldraine Creatures. So without further ado, here are the top 10 figures Wizkids needs to make now.
10.
We start with the Canopic Golem from Candlekeep Mysteries. This CR13 large construct is a potential nightmare for your party, especially spellcasters. With limited spell immunity and spell deflection, level 7 spells and lower have no effect on the Canopic Golem. And using its reaction, it can turn one spell attack back on any member of the party. Your group will quickly realize they can't rely on spells and will have to rely on weapon attacks. And with the 252 hit points, plus 10 to melee attacks, and 27 average damage on 2 attacks, this is not a creature they will want to go toe-to-toe with for long. The artwork for the Canopic Golem is beautiful, and he would make an excellent figure with a transparent plastic, lightly painted with gold highlights in his eyes and on the eye chest mark. I don't think the shards are necessary, and the pose from the artwork would work well for the figure.
9.
Our next potential figure really speaks to my horror-loving heart. The animated coffin comes to us from Adventure Atlas, The Mortuary, which I had known about this obscure CR13 construct earlier, and I'm looking forward to the moment my players are in a tomb and I get to describe legs sprouting from one of the coffins and the coffin crawling up a wall to the ceiling above them. It doesn't do a ton of damage with a +5 to hit on 2 slam attacks, but it does have an entrap attack, grappling any large or smaller creature it hits with this action. Of course, coffins are rarely empty, and there is a table of potential contents, including a slumbering vampire spawn, a groaning mummy, or a portal to the Path of Grays. As always, the DM is free to decide what is really inside each coffin.
8.
Wizkids, if you're listening, we don't need any more Displacer Beasts. What we do need is box sets of creatures from some of the smaller books, including the aforementioned Monstrous Compendium Volume 4 Eldraine Creatures. There were so many creatures in this book that I want to run at my players that I would definitely buy the box set for it. But if I'm choosing one to make a figure right now, it has to be the Goose Mother. This bird is not meant for kids, as she has 5 heads and, like a Hydra, replaces 2 for every one she loses. She has the potential to put everyone within 10 feet of her to sleep, boasts 3 legendary resistances, and regains 10 hit points for every head that regrows. She's a CR7 huge fey creature, and the only problem I can see running her is knowing my players. They probably will try to take her as a pet. She also comes with a table of potential contents in her eggs, including a toy goose, a figurine of wondrous power, or a candied egg.
7.
Moving right along, we have what could be the most interesting figure from this list. The Fractine is yet another large construct, CR9, and comes to us from the Monstrous Compendium Spelljammer Creatures. Some of the monsters from this book were reprinted in Boo's Astral Menagerie, but the Fractine was somehow left out. It is just a large mirror that can entrap large or smaller creatures in a demiplane. Think the mirror prison General Zod was placed in Superman 2. It can hold up to 2 creatures, and these creatures can be seen in the surface of the mirror. What would make this such an interesting figure is the opportunity to include images of other creatures with it. I'm thinking the Fractine would be made of clear plastic with a slot in the middle, and could come with a dozen or so cardstock images of various adventurers and common wild space monsters that the DM can swap in and out. It would even be easy to print out images of the player's actual characters to put inside the Fractine, should they be so unfortunate.
6,
Way back in 2018, Wizkids released a set of miniatures for Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, and although it had 44 figures in the lineup, there were dozens that could have had an amazing figure made. The Flux Charger is just one of them, and I love the creature design in this artwork. This is another figure that, if done right, could blend transparent plastic with paint to show all that electricity flowing between its armor plates, and show that little ringed planet at its heart. It doesn't have the greatest stat block and has the potential to self-destruct before killing any adventurers, but it's still an amazing design, and with current WizKids standards, would be a great figure.
5,
There are 2 fey creatures from Mordenkainen's Fiendish Folio that I love to summon with Conjure Woodland Beings, one being the Mite, and the other is our next entry, the Kilmulus. The artwork on this tiny fey creature makes him look as endearing as he is pathetic. I would strongly consider allowing a Pact of the Chain Warlock to summon this guy as a familiar. The Kilmulus is probably never hurt anyone directly, but if you treat him well, he can give up to 8 people 10 temporary hit points after a long rest. Not game breaking, but a good little boost and ripe for potential roleplay as a comedic sidekick.
4,
It blows me away that we have yet to have a pre-painted giant constrictor snake figure. This is one of the most important beasts in the game. Besides being a good monster to throw at players, it is one of the most popular choices for a Moon Druid's wild shape, conjure animals, and even has its own magical item, the Staff of the Python. The first character I ever created was a Moon Druid, and by the end of the campaign, I somehow had 2 Staffs of the Python. It was not uncommon for me to summon 2 giant constrictor snakes, throw down my staff to get 2 more, and then wild shape into one myself. That's 300 hit points of snake meat on the table, and I had no figure to show for it. There is a giant constrictor snake from Nazul's Marvelous Unpainted Minis, but as I showed you in the intro, I am not a painter, which is why I buy the pre-painted ones.
3,
I am truly surprised that our next figure has not already been made. The Holophant is one of the most recognizable creatures from Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus. And with that book getting its own line of figures, you would think the Holophant would already be out there. Somehow, this guy got skipped. Now, who doesn't want a golden baby elephant celestial? While the Holophant is only CR 5, it is loaded with features like innate spellcasting, an aura of invincibility, and 3 times a day can blow through its trunk, causing a cone of radiant damage or a cone of deafening noise. The Holophant is a prime contender as a subject for the Cleric's Planar Ally spell.
2,
It's been 2 years since the release of Strixhaven, A Curriculum of Chaos, and somehow we still do not have any Owlin figures from WizKids. There isn't even an official stat block to use Owlins as opponent creatures, so I am breaking my own rule here. It's almost like Wizards of the Coast knew the playable race would be insta-banned in many tables, so they decided not to support it after it was released. When the Spelljammer figures were released, we got several variations of the GIF. What should happen is every time Wizards of the Coast releases a new playable race, WizKids needs to come out with a small set for that race, similar to the Warbands line, giving players options for both male and female, martial, spellcaster, and expert class figures.
1,
Our final creature that needs its own figure is one of the most recently introduced. The Refraction of Ilvash was first introduced in Phandelver and Below, the Shattered Obelisk. There are so many awesome figures that came out of that book, and I am looking forward to doing my review if my pre-orders ever arrive. But somehow, this aspect of the God of Illithis did not make it into the set. The artwork is delightfully grotesque, and is sure to get a reaction from players when you first set it on the table. It doesn't have a particularly strong stat block and is little more than a beefed up Elder Brain, except that it can move on its own, impose disadvantage on all attacks, saving throws, and ability checks with no saving throw against this, and can cast Feeble Mind. This is a creature tailor-made to torment your players over several sessions, wiping out the mind of the strongest fighters, then teleporting away. I can't wait to run this monster, and I'm bummed we don't have a figure to go with it. So, that was my list of 10 figures I want Wizkids to make right now. It could also serve as a list of 10 obscure monsters to use against or with your players. Which of these creatures do you want a figure of, and are there any you think I missed? Please leave a comment below. As always, I'm Jeff. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.